Another super important theme is religion, superstition, and faith. I don't think you can talk about these two texts without talking about these themes. In the Crucible, the strength, it's important to notice that the strength of theocracy is that it does command unity on all levels, but the thing about that is that any opposition to that will be called evil, basically. There's this philosopher called Marquis de Sade, and that's spelled Marquisdesade. And he has this great quote that goes, religions are the cradles of despotism. I think it's, for something so broad of a topic such as religion, superstition, and faith, I wouldn't necessarily be critiquing it yourself, because we do want to remain, not offensive and not attacking to religion itself. So I think can be a good idea to pin that on someone else. So I think that Marquis de Sade quote, religions are the cradles of despotism, can be nice to link that into someone else who is critical and critiquing religion. Basically, in the Crucible, the role of reason and empirical evidence in making judgments was absolutely obsolete and made theocracy vulnerable to exploitation from individuals with self-preserving agendas. I mean, we absolutely see this through Abigail and what she is able to do. We've already talked about how slander can be wielded as a weapon of malignant opportunists. Again, we cite Abigail for this, and how that reveals the moral mutability of theocratic judicial system. Abigail exploits the Salemites and the court's literalist and fundamentalist interpretation of the Bible through her planting the needle in a poppet, aware that it will be seen as evidence of witchcraft, as she is cognizant of Salem's tendency to look for, quote, unnatural causes. The Puritans basically believed that religious factions had a place in government, and it encouraged homogeneity and conformity with regimented social structures and punishing towards those who challenged authority. Miller proposes, therefore, that the implementation of religion into authority is basically at the detriment of civil ruling, and that because the laws under God were irrational and had no real kind of rational enforcement, Abigail is therefore forced to act irrationally in fear of being persecuted. By contrast, Year of Wonders, it can be seen that religion kind of has more of a positive role than it does in the Crucible. Montpellier is a good example for this. He actively criticizes the wielding of extreme religion to justify fear and prejudice, warning people not to fall into superstitions, implying that it is the town's ugly thoughts and evil doubting of one another that is diabolical rather than the unfounded suspicions that they have. So that's a really interesting point of comparison between Montpellier and theocracy in the Crucible, is that Montpellier discourages extremism, but the Crucible, the court system in the Crucible kind of really tries to enforce it. Montpellier is able to unite his community so that they all partook of going to church, whereas incendiary sermons provide a sense of structure and purpose to the townspeople's lives. And he says, you must school your mind and not let your fears be your master. Despite his own loss of faith, Montpellier recognizes that he must remain in Eyam to bring comfort to those who yet do believe in God. An example of this method being effective is the Billings family, and there's a quote for that goes, "Nonconformists began to come." So that really shows his ability to coalesce and unite a community. Moreover, Anna's response to Montpellier's preaching, feeling as though his words lifted and carried her away into a strange ecstasy. This is kind of demonstrating the capacity of religion to allay suffering, and it's further observed by Montpellier's significant role within Eyam during the plague to bring comfort to the ill and dying. Brooks demonstrates that individuals are greatly comforted by Montpellier's words, describing Jacob Merrill's brow unknotting and giving a great sigh of relief following his absolution. Whilst attending the deathbed of Jacob Merrill, Montpellier asserts that God made our lusts ... and understands our weaknesses, which Brooks juxtaposes with his later assertion that Eleanor's lust caused the sin, so she should atone by living with her lusts unrequited. So you do see there is quite a significant development in his attitude towards religion and how that plays out in the text. So to reiterate, religion is quite harshly critiqued, mainly because it is embodied in the form of theocracy in the Crucible, which basically conflates church and state, which now we know is probably not a great thing to do. And in Year of Wonders, you could argue that it is presented in more of a positive light. That's definitely what I found easier to do in Year 12, because it's going to be more rewarded if you talk about differences rather than similarities, I think, because it's easy to talk about similarities with these two texts because there are quite a lot of themes that are the same. But if you can talk about the different ways that those same themes are presented, I think you're ultimately going to get rewarded for that. So with Year of Wonders, you could definitely say that there is a healing element to religion that is not present in the Crucible. So I hope this has helped you have a little bit better of an understanding of religion, superstition, and faith, because it is definitely a really important theme to look out for in both texts.